So ESPN has released an article about every team's salary cap. This is written by Olgan, and he's done like a fantastic job of explaining everything. Goes in detail for every team and like everything about it. So if you haven't read the article, I highly recommend to check it out. But definitely the best bit about this is it goes in depth about every team spent, like how much each team spent, how much actually went towards the salary cap, and how much team were over or under the salary cap, and if they had to pay anything the luxury tax. So first up, this is how much money each team spent on their players. So like this is the entire roster throughout the entire year, how much money was actually spent in total. And you can see the massive difference in spending between some of these teams. Like Perth Wildcats almost twice as much as the Cairns Taipan. And like a quarter of that was probably just Bryce himself. But if you look through this, like you have other high spending teams. So you got the Wildcats almost 4 million. They have Bryce Cotter and Kristen Doodle, Dylan Windler. They're expensive guys. Ty Webster's was on a big contract, so that's like another big chunk of the money. And this is like all the players. This is like their development, everything that goes inside to it. Then we have teams like Adelaide 36ers with Montrez, Kendrick Davis. That was like a fair chunk of their money. Like they've got two marquee Australians. They've got the Lat Mayan contract, and their Dutch contract was pretty bulky. So for them to not be first is actually kind of surprising. And the other big spender is the Sydney Kings, almost 3.5 million. We know Xavier Cooks was $1 million of that, so everybody else was under that $2.5 million mark, which is pretty solid by them, if by all accounts. Probably the one that stands out is the fact that New Zealand Breakers only spent under $2.5 million, and yet they had that whole Freddie Gillespie Taco 4 contract issue or whatever. Like, how much was Taco actually making? I thought he'd be on a bigger contract considering where they're at, and they also got guys like PJC, Jonah Bolden, Mitch McCarron, like guys that wouldn't be cheap. And then here we have the actual cap spent on each team. Melbourne United with the most, which is kind of surprising, but it also isn't since they have four high-level Aussies. They had two imports, and yeah, so you have like guys like Delhi, you have Chris Goulding, you have Shea Ely, and you have Jack White. That's probably why they end up spending so much money on the cap. And if you're looking at why the Brisbane Bullets are so low, is because of the injuries. This is like every game, a certain amount is spent on the cap. If your player is injured, you're not actually spending it on the cap, which is why a lot of teams are lower and a lot of teams are higher. If you have like a fully healthy roster, which Melbourne United did for the most part, you get a higher end up cap space, and like Melbourne and Adelaide and Perth, that's typically why. And that's why you see a team like Sydney that spent $3.5 million, but they are just under 2 million because Xavier Cooks is only capped out at like 200k, and then your second marquees at like 250 to 300 or something. But again, I do recommend actually reading the article. It is super interesting, and it does give a lot more depth about like where money is spent and how teams actually spend it throughout the year. This also gives a bit more context for like that Larry Kesselman, Jared Novelli case that's been going on. This is why a lot of teams are spending their money and why they do need to get a bit more. But let me know which team is